Yeah, I think in a lot of cases this is absolutely true that the decision really hasn't been made. I mean, the market's still young from a diversity of application and scale standpoint, and so there's numerous examples here where it hasn't really been established, in my opinion. Transportation segment is a pretty clear example of this, with heavy-duty trucking, rail, marine applications kind of all falling into this category. I think this highlights the difficulty and system-wide consequences that are associated with this decision. So the heavy duty fuel cell electric trucks in the United States is a pretty strong example. There doesn't seem to be a consensus at this point on liquid versus gaseous for onboard the vehicle. So this decision is pretty difficult, right? There are multiple application requirements for trucking, such as long haul trucking, where you need something like 600 miles or 1,000 kilometers of range for these vehicles. So you need a lot of storage capacity on board the truck. But then if you shift to like something like a day haul truck, you don't need that level of range, and so your capacity requirements are lower. And so but it adds the complexity is kind of compounded because the decision at the vehicle side has a large consequences upstream at the segments of the hydrogen system that are outside the vehicle, particularly on the fueling station. So you can still design the fueling station to provide um, gaseous fueling if you've made that liquid decision, but you need significant supporting infrastructure to make the liquid to gas conversion and dispensing capabilities. And so, if you're really, it's just a challenge, as you lock in a decision, it just has so many upstream consequences. So then the decision that the truck really drives the supply side requirements as well. And that goes past the fueling station all the way back to the hydrogen production source. So I think the challenge here is further complemented with relatively high cost of liquid components and systems in a new market application specifically. So like taking a truck fleet, for example, if the fleet is small, like it would be in a demonstration scenario, the relative investment cost for the liquid system can be quite high. And is very likely a mismatch against intermittent usage in that scenario, especially as the fleet's very small and you only need an occasional fill type scenario for that small fleet. But there's some other examples that are worth talking about as well. And I think data centers is an interesting example. So you might immediately assume data centers would go liquid due to the large energetic demand on the system. But some of the challenges of going with, if you were to choose gaseous on that side, that would be the obvious lower storage density of the gaseous system, the increased footprint, and then the low payload of deliveries, right? Assuming that you need deliveries to that type of site, and the need to deliver at high frequencies if the hydrogen consumption rate is high. So those could be significant barriers to adoption in that market area. You need gas compression assets potentially, depending on your storage pressures of that you're targeting and how the hydrogen is brought into the system. And then, that means depending on your storage pressure, you could have leaks in the system and reliability could be a concern. So, but there's so much here to consider, even on this type of system. So, for instance, if you're looking to only provide backup power to a data center, are you going to, let's say you're replacing traditional backup diesel petrol generators, for instance. If you do that, if that's your application, do you want to for a data center, for instance, do you really want to implement a liquid hydrogen system for this extremely intermittent application? It may or may not make sense in that scenario, right? This will lock you into that supplier. And then how much space do you have to site the system? So if space is a major constraint, then moderate scale gaseous systems might be a decent option. Sorry, if space is not a major constraint, then moderate scale gaseous systems might be a decent option. Or if space is at a premium, liquid might be more attractive, or even a more a moderate scale gaseous system that has a small footprint could be a good option for you as well. So these moderate scale gaseous hydrogen systems, basically putting in a plug for our gigavolt energy storage systems, right? We've designed these systems to accommodate a range of footprint requirements because we understand that this is a challenge for adoption of hydrogen systems. So another consideration is this data center, I guess, example falls into this category still, is the expected advancement of supply through that pipelines. Mike touched on it. If you commit to a liquid supply, it's a very large infrastructure capital investment, but if a natural gas pipeline could be accessible and it's expected that that pipeline transitions to hydrogen through blending and maybe ultimate transition all the way to pure hydrogen, then you can potentially consider installing a gaseous hydrogen system for the early application in that scenario. And then that can be transitioned to become something like buffer storage as the complementary pipeline assets come online, for instance. So I think this is a good segue to talk a little bit specifically more about transmission, since I've spent most of my time on storage. I think in many cases, the ideal solution for transmission of hydrogen is not batch transfers. It's using tube trailers or liquid hydrogen deliveries, but it's pipeline supply, right? As Mike mentioned. So it makes sense to evaluate and consider this in your existing and future options for your application as well. I think everybody watching this probably knows this, but natural gas and hydrogen blending is a prominent topic and holds a lot of promise both in the United States and Europe and other areas where gas pipeline assets exist. So, for instance, in the United States, there's a massive gas pipeline infrastructure that's both great potential energy storage capacity. It's a transmission solution for hydrogen as well. So it serves both purposes, right? One of the primary challenges of this area is the concern of pipeline lifetime, compatibility with hydrogen due to that risk of embrittlement. And so, our gigavolt energy storage solution was born from innovations and developments of our SG Liner product, which is compatible, or which is a composite reinforced polymer liner solution that enables that transmission and distribution scale pipeline rehabilitation. So we basically can jump past the embrittlement concern entirely with steel pipelines, reactivate those pipelines for hydrogen service, and make them, suitable for both hydrogen now or in the future, as well as the transition with gas blending. So really, I guess the gist of it here is why mess around with batch transmission when you can jump straight to the proven endpoint solution that's pipelines. So.